So what I am doing today is demonstrating how to grout. We're taking a bowl of grout, and I'm using like a camel colored today, and I have a little bit of water, and with grout you always want to add a little bit at a time. It's not like flour where it takes a lot of water to make it into kind of a pasty mess. So you want to just add a little bit at a time, kind of get the feel for it. You can use grout at different consistency for different projects. If you have a project that's tiny with very close together tiles, you may want your grout a little looser than if you have a project with big spaces. So I just kind of keep stirring it, adding water a tiny, tiny bit at a time. It's always less than you think until you get it to the right consistency. And I say creamy peanut butter, which this is not yet. But it's a good thing to know that if you add too much water and you don't have more grout that you can add to thicken it back up, if you let it sit for a little while, you can always thicken it. So here we go. This is the thickness I want for this project. And this is, if it's not creamy peanut butter, maybe oatmeal. Just depends what your frame of reference is. When I think creamy peanut butter, I think the natural kind without the oil in it. So to me, that's creamy peanut butter. So what we're going to do is I like to apply my grout with my hand so I can push it into where I want it to. I feel like it's a little bit more of a process that way than if I just use the tongue depressor. But what you're really trying to do is really pack it into those little places in between all your tiles. And this is going to be the same whether you use even tiles or uneven like these plates. But because I have plates, there are a lot of uneven spaces. So I want to pay special attention to, you know, if I have a plate that has a big deep curve, how much of the grout do I want to push under that curve to really fill it in, make it look uniform. And you're just kind of just pushing along and doing it by feel. So one of the things that you want to do when you're putting your grout in is making sure that you get in all those spaces. And sometimes you're going to have spaces that you can't get into with your fingers. A good example are these little spaces in here underneath the teapot or the teacup handle. So I'm just using the little tongue depressor that I put in all the grout kits to kind of get in those spaces. And then I'm going back to my gloves, and unfortunately my gloves are a little bit too big, but you know, we don't always have the perfect everything when we do our projects, so try not to focus too much on that. So you just keep going around, pushing it in all your little cracks and crevices, and then the next step is going to be the sides. Once we get all this in here really good. Okay, so you can see that we have our grout, which is kind of a pooey color, all over our tiles pretty much. I'm going to do a last wipe through before I turn it to do the sides. Now, this is just a cursory wipe through, really, just with my glove, just kind of smooth off any of the grout from any of the tiles. The biggest reason for this, one, it makes cleaning it off at the end easier, but the biggest thing is it saves your grout, because obviously we need some more for our next project. One of the questions I always get asked is how do you pick your grout colors? You know, grout color is something that is a trial and error kind of thing. I try not to dwell too much on it. I have a tendency to grout things in white or light colors because actually a friend of mine, Crystal Thomas, who is a mosaic artist, and she has a website under Crystal Thomas Mosaics, is actually the person that told me that what she does a lot of times is she just at the end paints her grout with acrylic paint, and that was like the best tip I think I ever got, because, well, first of all, at the time I was working on my zombie mosaic, and let me just grab that real quick. So my zombie, I had originally grouted completely in this color down here. Hopefully you can see it, which is like a brown. And you couldn't see any of the definition on the zombie. You couldn't see the face, the shirt, the intestines, nothing. So when Crystal told me that, I immediately painted my zombie, and I absolutely love him now. And maybe it doesn't look like a traditional mosaic, but I ended up with a mosaic that I completely love. What I'm doing now, you can see, is I'm just smoothing the grout along the edge. And when you have a beaded edge like this, what you're pretty much doing is creating a little bit more of a cohesive edge, getting grout around all the beads, both front and the back, just to make sure that they will be held in. Remember that the grout acts a little bit like a cement when it cures, to hold your pieces in additionally. Although you don't ever rely solely on grout, you want to always make sure that you've used the right glue for your project. Another tip I have is that a lot of people want to do their grouting by the kitchen sink because that's, you know, a common place to do a messy project. I purposely don't do my grouting at the kitchen, at the sink. The reason for that is that it's so easy to just mindlessly put your grout into the sink. All these little pieces could easily be something that are going down the sink, and you definitely don't want that. You can cause some serious and very expensive plumbing problems if you do that. So we're just going to go along, smooth out our sides, and get this piece to where we can let it set for about 20 minutes. And we'll see you in a bit. Okay, so I have it a little bit more wiped off, and I'm going to go ahead and start. I'm really squeezing out my sponge. I have a nice little piece of sponge here. I found that having a smaller piece of sponge works better for me. I have a little bit more control over it than when I use full-size sponges, and so I lose fewer pieces that way. What I'm doing is I'm just going through and I'm gently wiping off my tiles. I want to make sure that I know where I have smaller, lower pieces, so I uncover those also. And I'm just kind of going through and making them look nice. I want to be gentle, but it's not uncommon for pieces to get lost, because that just is what can happen, where some more pieces might fall off. One thing you can do to prevent that is make sure that you are not letting your sponge get too wet, because then what you're doing is you're rehydrating the grout, and then your grout is going to be mushy again, which is not what you want. So you're just kind of working the surface. You're going to have hazy tiles. Just flip your sponge over. Again, I can't remember if I said this already. I have a bowl of water here, so I'm not at the sink. And I will have to, as my bowl of water gets dirty, change it out. Just part of the process. So I'm just going to go through and keep wiping. Keep wiping. And I'll work on this a little bit, and then I'll turn the camera back on. Alright, so here I am. It's the next day, and I have my project all grouted. I have it all wiped off, have my sides fixed. Everything looks fantastic, except I hate my grout color. I went with this sandy beachy color because to tell the truth, I kind of thought I wouldn't like it, but I wanted to show you guys, first of all, grout, and then I want to do another tutorial on what to do if you don't like your grout. So that's going to be a tutorial on painting grout, but here's the finished product. You can see, you know, you can look at this and determine whether or not darker grout with a lighter color tile is something you like. Grout is such an individual thing that it's hard for me to tell you what's going to work for your project, but that's something that you can look at and start to figure out on your own what you like based on your taste and your decorating style. So anyway, that's it for this one, and if you have any questions, shoot me an email at tasha@clayful, C-L-A-Y-F-U-L, creationstudio.com. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.